the issue, well, what is the right web approach? And the answer I have to that question is, well, there is no right web approach. Whatever brings you the results that you desire will be the right web approach for you. And consequently, a methodology has to really adapt to the resources at hand, whether you have internal resources, external resources in terms of an agency, time schedules, strengths, weaknesses, et cetera, et cetera. So, again, the methodology I've put up there is really to show how things could work in a certain environment. Don't take it for every word, because you would definitely, if you were thrust into a certain corporate environment that was even similar to that, I would strongly advise you to do your own homework and come up with a methodology that works for the environment that you're currently in. However, one rule of thumb, which regardless of methodology, that you should really take on is the following. You must clearly define the business, architecture, interaction, usability, and marketing requirements of the project. Make sure the finished product meets those requirements and compromise where and when necessary. Again, many times you hear me refer to rules of web design or interaction design. Again, I may articulate them differently from other people. The important thing is to understand the reason behind those rules, understand the dynamics, and obviously use common sense when working within an environment to see whether the rule brings you a positive result or a negative or a little bit of both, and you need to manage options accordingly. Now, if you're looking for maybe a more simple model, let me share with you the following, five-stage process, which is really typical of, has been typical of design projects and, IT projects over the past 15 years. I mean, the first phase is obviously strategic phase. Second one, a concept and planning, gathering the homework you've done in your strategic session and really coming up with a concept and planning the delivery of that concept. Third would be a design and prototype session where you'd be designing and putting in all the features, coming up with the prototype. And then the fourth will be the actual production phase, building, putting together the application or the design. And, last phase would be the testing phases, putting that through focus groups, doing usability testing, everything you need to do to make the finishing touches on what you delivered so it could function the highest possible way. Now, another issue which is frequently looked at by web professionals is, whether to go about a sequential or phased process. If you were to go out to a web design or e-business consultancy, you would normally go through the steps I've just mentioned sequentially, meaning you would first spend a lot of time on strategy, and once you had that right, close it off and move on to the next, and so forth. Usually when you're working within a company and you're not an external agency, sometimes things get a little bit more complex because, you may go through strategy and move all the way to design and prototype session, but then you have your business people telling you that they want to change the strategy. Now, this is very common. It's definitely not a good idea to change your story midway. However, it is a situation a lot of people have dealt with, and when you are forced into that, then you definitely need to be dynamic enough to move into a phase type of approach. And, that brings you to an example similar to the one I described there in my approach with the phase methodology. Again, what determines the validity of methodology for yourself is whether it brings you the desired result. I'm going to take a few moments to touch base on what your typical web team would probably look like. If you were to build a web team for either a medium-sized or even a large company or one of the separate business consultancies, you're probably looking at the following dynamic. You'd be bringing on a producer or project leader. His or her role would be coordinating, scheduling, drafting budgets, relationships with the clients, babysitting different people within the team, and so on. The role is seen that of a mediator, probably someone good who has had experience in different areas, or at least a sensibility, given that the areas and the rest of the team will be slightly diverse. Probably the next individual you'd be having on board would be an information designer. Information designer would be very key in information architecture phase, also in drafting the interaction requirements and coming up with a solution for those. You'd then be bringing on a visual designer, somebody who is a graphic artist or a web artist. Their focus would clearly be on brand identity, sensorial design, content visualization, and definitely they would be working very closely with the information designer on the interaction design portion. Another person you'd be bringing on board would be a creative director or a lead creative person. This person would be responsible for carrying out the vision of the project or the site. He would support the designers on all artistic decisions. If it's web presence for a company and it's an internal team, they would probably coordinate the look and feel throughout the other areas of marketing communications. If this were, e-business consultancy, they would probably manage the identities of various clients and, have direct, client contact to, relay the client's request onto the rest of the web team. The person which has not been included but is a very key role in today as well is usually an HCI professional. Now, you probably get a very strong information designer with a strong HCI background, or you can get an HCI professional, standalone professional. HCI stands for Human-Computer Interaction, and it's mostly focused on usability. A topic which we'll spend a lot more time on later. Usability is, how usable is your website, and what aspects can we improve to make it more usable, depending on your audience's needs. Another key area where you'd be bringing on people would be the software engineering or the database side of things. I mean, a lot of the websites building today have to be interactive, and that involves working within the database realm of things and the front-end web area of things, whether it's an ASP developer or you may opt for an older style Perl or CGI person. You definitely need people who know how to program to create the applications that will be used to your web audience. At this point, I'd like to rush on to the next section, which will be entitled Strategic Planning. And I'd like to give you a few seconds to get back onto the main page and click on Strategic Planning. So that will be the next session. I will stop for about 5 seconds.